In 2016, the South African government made decisions that would lead to the deaths of approximately 144 people. The saddest part of this being that those victims all had mental health conditions. Caring for someone with a mental health issue can be difficult. It can take a toll on both the mind and the body. However, regardless of the effect this has on us, we still do it, because our humanity tells us that it is the right thing to do. However, going forward in this video, we are going to talk about people that I can only assume have no humanity. People who have mental health issues are among the most fragile people in modern society, and they deserve to be protected and loved from a world that often cannot understand them. Tragically, this doesn't always happen, and we end up in situations where people with these issues are treated cruelly and as less than human. This is one of those situations. One way a sector of the South African government made decisions that led to the deaths of over 100 people that deserved better. The Life Esidimeni Psychiatric Care Hospital specialized in the care of approximately 2,000 people with mental health issues. The hospital was a long-standing facility with the proper experience and equipment to take care of these patients. While we're not sure how the hospital came to be, they did have a 40-year contract with the Gauteng Department of Health. This contract ensured that if people within that province needed psychiatric care, there would be a well-equipped and experienced team ready to take care of them. That, however, was until 2015, when the Gauteng Department of Health made a drastic and tragic decision. According to the Gauteng Department of Health, they wanted to deinstitutionalize mental health care and also save costs. So in 2015, they decided to end their contract with the hospital. And while we can look at the idea of deinstitutionalizing mental health care to make it more widely available to people as a good thing, the reality of the situation is that they were unprepared and not properly equipped for what they wanted to do. Which leads me to believe that this was less about deinstitutionalization and more about saving money. However, saving money came at the cost of patients, because what would happen next was just careless. It was so careless, in fact, that a number of non-profit organizations began representing families of the patients and coming forward to explain to the Department of Health why this was such a bad idea. Despite settling litigation that required them to provide a safe plan to move forward, the department failed to comply, leading families to march to their headquarters multiple times in order to object the transfer of patients. All of the concerns and warnings were ignored, and I'm confident that the tragedy that followed is solely to blame on the South African government. Between March and August 2016, the transfer of patients began. Patients with various mental health conditions were discharged from the Esidimeni facility and then transferred to NGOs and hospitals around the province of Gauteng. If you had any illusion that this was a smooth process, I can promise you it wasn't. There was no proper planning or consideration for the needs of patients being transferred, and the conditions of the transfer were so appalling that some patients were even loaded onto trucks. During this transfer, a number of confidential records were also lost. Groups of families had no idea what was going on and could not locate their loved ones. In some of these cases, patients were transferred multiple times from facility to facility before their families finally found them. When families were finally able to visit their loved ones, they found them in overcrowded facilities that lacked resources and staff. However, the worst realization to come out of the initial transfer period was that many of the locations patients were transferred to were unlicensed and unprepared to deal with people who had mental health disorders. By this point, you may have heard everything I've said, and you may assume that the worst of it is behind us. However, like I said at the start of the video, over 100 people lost their lives because of the situation, and this is where the tragedy starts. In order to properly take care of a psychologically disabled person, you have to be in the right state of mind yourself. If you are not, you can often react to the person with disappointment and anger. People with mental disabilities often don't understand the world around them, cannot properly process what is happening to them, or even why something is happening to them. So they need to be treated with patience and care. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the staff in some of these facilities had those virtues. Reports of people being neglected, abused, and even tortured by the staff started to emerge. Because of their conditions, these patients could not object or fight back against what was happening to them. They just had to take the torture, not even knowing why. Along with the neglect and torture that some patients experienced, the facilities that some of these patients were in lacked basic amenities like beds, blankets, and proper sanitation. To make the situation much worse, patients were not given the proper medication or treatment for their conditions and ended up developing secondary infections, dehydration, and various other problems due to their poor living conditions. These patients were in what seemed like a perfectly good facility where they received proper care. And because of the greed of the government, they were moved to the most inhumane conditions imaginable. This directly led to the deaths of 144 people, as well as the torture of many others. When the situation came to light, various legal battles followed. The result of these led to payments and counseling for a number of people who had suffered because of the government's decisions. A number of officials were also found to be negligent, causing the deaths of these patients. They went on to face legal action. Unfortunately, none of these fixes the fact that over 100 patients who needed the care and protection of society was forced to endure torture, neglect, and tragic and painful deaths, all while they probably did not understand what was happening to them or why it was happening.